All right, Manna Church, here we are, starting out week one of our little 8-week journey of LeaderStep. So thrilled that you're a part of this small group and that we're going to talk about leadership development, how you can be a leader, where God has called you to develop as a leader, what that looks like for you, what that looks like for Manna Church, what the application of that is as you step forward as a part of the body of Christ. And so let's start right there. What is Manna's philosophy of leadership development? We're going to answer some questions. Who can be a leader? Is everyone called to be a leader? Do you have a calling? But before we get to those, I want to walk through again what we've covered in first step. We've talked about it again in next step. We'll talk about it again here in leader step, and that is the vision of Manna Church. Where are we trying to go, and how do we get there? And then you'll see how all of this ties in together, how you as a leader are an integral part of accomplishing what God has called us to do. See, we've got a vision to change the world. We believe our Manna Church mission is to glorify God by equipping His people to change their world and by planting churches with a world-changing vision. That's what we're all about. That's what we're chasing. That's the finish line for us, is to accomplish these things and to honor God in what we're doing. How are we going to do that? Well, we plan to accomplish this by helping God's people discover their individual gifts and callings. We want to create an environment where these callings can be developed and deploy God's people into their world to be salt and light. And our small groups are designed to help accomplish this goal. Now, as we walk through LeaderStep, you're going to see how this applies to you, and you're going to realize that you have a part in playing, in accomplishing this vision. You are what takes us as a church as people, you stepping into who God made you to be and accomplishing what He's after in your life and developing, deploying those gifts, bring us all as a church into what God has for us. So exciting. Then we're going to help God's people build strong families and create a community where individuals may find fulfillment and expression regardless of age or marital status. There's a place for everyone. And then we plan to accomplish this by planting churches with the same vision, both domestically here in the United States, particularly along the military highway through Multiply, and abroad all over the world. We want to plant churches with this same vision, this same mission to glorify God, helping you to discover your gifts and to use them for His kingdom all over the world. So at Manna Church, we do three things. These are unique to us. We believe that this is our charter. This is our commission. It comes from 2 commandments and a great commission. Those three things are to love God, and we love God in inspiring worship experiences. That's what we want to have together. And then we love each other with life-giving small groups. And then we love the world through world-changing outreach. If you take a look at your notes, and you should have some LeaderStep notes there, you'll see the triangle. There's the love God component, and that is the up part of the triangle. There's the love each other component, and that's in, and that's the small group side. And then there's the love of the world, and that's out. That's where evangelism, outreach, and missions come into play. And so for us, this works its way out through each one of our local churches, and then all of the churches that are Manna through Multiply. We're one church in many locations. And if you're here in LeaderStep, you've been through Next Step, so you've heard us talk about micro sites and city sites and multi-sites and all the different Manna churches that make up a part of taking this vision to change the world to the ends of the earth. And for us to be effective as a church, and again, I'm not talking about an ink. You'll see that in ink. By that I mean a corporate thing. I'm not talking about the church as an institution. I'm talking about the church as a gathering of people. You'll see that clearly over the next several weeks as we walk out what it is to operate as Manna Church and what our operational principles are. As we talk about those, you'll see that we really believe the church is people. So as a group of people chasing what God has for us, we become maximally effective as we grow everybody into being the person that God has called them to be, which involves leadership in a variety of capacities and in a variety of ways in a wide sphere of influence. At Manna Church, we believe what we do here is leadership development. We believe that everybody is a leader. We believe that God has called everybody to leadership. And so our part to play as leaders, as the church, is to develop leadership in every person who comes into contact with us. So I've got a question for you, and I'd invite you in your small group, take a moment to answer this question. Are leaders born or are leaders made? Now, if you said, yes, I agree with you. I believe that leaders are born. There are those people come out of the womb, and it seems like from the age of 2 on, everything they're involved with, they lead. They're the captain on the sports team. When they sit down for a group project in college, without even anybody having a discussion, everybody looks to that person. They lead in school. They lead in out of school. They lead at where everything they do, they lead. And so you go, absolutely. There are people who are born as leaders, and God bless them, but that isn't most of us. Many leaders, maybe even most leaders, are made. So leaders are both born and made. Leadership skills and how to become a leader and how to develop as a leader, all of that is learned. And even those people who are born into leadership will develop more by learning how to lead, by engaging in intentional, purposeful leadership development. That's why we love all of y'all so much, because you're here making a choice to say, I want to work on developing my leadership. I want to learn more about leadership. I want to learn about how I can be more effective at leadership. I want some principles and some skills to be put in my life to propel me forward as a leader. So remember, you've made that step to say, I'm a part of LeaderStep, but I want you to know what we believe is that you are a leader. Every person is a leader, and your development is more about your capacities and your character and your faith being stretched and expanded, than it is about acquiring knowledge and skills. Though the latter are important, fundamentally, we believe that leadership and the development of a leader starts internally. It starts in who you are and expanding your character and who God is making you to be and becoming that person. That's how leadership and LeaderStep starts. And so LeaderStep lays a vital foundation for your development as a leader, especially here at Manna Church. We've got some stuff that we're going to walk through that's particular, unique to Manna Church. And so that's what we're going to do. You can develop in your leadership. God is prompting you. God is calling you to do so. And so I want to give you 5 ideas, and we'll set the framework for these over the next 7 times that we're together. But these are kind of 5 underpinnings of what we believe about leadership. And the first is this: everyone has a calling, and God determined it. God has called you. He made you. I love to say it this way: you are perfectly made by a perfect God for a precise purpose. And that purpose correlates with your calling. And so God gave you a calling. He determined it. I'm going to read to us all from Ephesians chapter 4. I'll start in the first verse. It says this: I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling. And the calling there that you have is not a common calling. It's your calling. It's unique to you. I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience and bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of Christ. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to the hope that belongs to your call. Now, this is written, where he's writing here in Ephesians 4, is written to church members, not to pastors. Sometimes you hear that and you go, okay, well, calling, yeah, that's got to be the pastor. And what he's telling you, that's for the pastor. No. How many times, though, I want you to notice, since he's talking to people here, members, does he mention the word call? He says it over and over. So God has called you to be someone, and he's called you to do something. And so that's the first idea there, is that every person has a calling, and God determined it, and our calling relates to others. It's for others. I just love that. So the second idea of these five I want to talk about is this. Everyone has a set of gifts, and God downloaded those gifts into you. You know, if you want to look at there's a number of places in the Bible where they've got lists of gifts, and there's all these different gifts that are mentioned. You could take a look in Romans chapter 12. You could jump into 1 Corinthians 12, and you'll find some gifts, and you could go there. And so we're not going to do that now, but you can go there and study, and there's a whole bunch of different types of gifts, and these are spiritual gifts that God has given you. It says in 1 Peter chapter 4, as each has received a gift. Now, what does that mean? That means every person has one. And if I can be so bold, I would say not only do you have one, I personally have never met a person who only has one spiritual gift. Every person I've met that I've hung out with and gotten to know, they've got more than one. So every person has multiple spiritual gifts. And like I told you, there's several lists in the Bible, a whole bunch of different lists and different places. And God has put something in you that you're good at. And it isn't a talent. It isn't a learned skill. It's a gift. And so maybe, you've got the gift of mercy. You didn't learn to be merciful to others. You didn't develop that like all on your own. And it's not something that's a talent. It's literally a gift that God gave you. And you have it. It's spiritual, and you put it into use. To what end? It says here in 1 Peter, use it to serve one another. It's not for you. It's for others. That's why small groups are so important, where you discover those gifts and where you discover how uniquely you can use those gifts. Because we'll see that your gifts and your callings, I'm about to tie this into the next point, but we'll see that your gifts and your callings can match up with your natural talents and abilities and what you're good at, and how you uniquely use that gift is your own. And so as you use that and you work on that gift and you develop that gift and you discover how to use it with others, the best way to do that is to get involved in a small group and learn from others' gifts. And as you use your gift, you see how God uses you. And it's just a wonderful, beautiful thing. It's all part of God's design. So he says, as each has received a gift, the gift of hospitality maybe, or the gift of teaching, or like I said, the gift of mercy, or any one of these gifts. So as each has received a gift, use it to what end? To serve one another as good stewards of God's very varied grace. This is what's amazing about this. I want you to think of it this way. Think of it as if God has given you a bowl. Think of your gift as a bowl. And you got several bowls. So you're there and you're holding it, and God deposits his grace into the bowl. And when I use that gift, what I do is I take this bowl where God has deposited his grace. That's what it means there. As good stewards of God's varied grace, we use our gift. When I pour that bowl out on others, I'm pouring the grace of God on them. I dump the grace onto people. And so if you've been coming to our church and, you listen to some of the messages and you're there and it's tempting sometimes. You go, wow, listen, that guy's there preaching and that's so awesome and I feel like I received from him. You know what's funny? That is the gift of teaching. It's a gift of God. And so when the person standing up there on the stage uses his or her gift of teaching that God has given them, and God pours his grace into that gift, and then they dump that grace out, what you're experiencing through the use of that gift by that person is the grace of God. When a person, I'm using this mercy gift a number of times, I just happen to love it, but when a person runs into somebody who's got the gift of mercy and they use the gift of mercy, they're pouring the grace of God in mercy on that person. I think it's amazing that God would trust his grace with all of us. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. Now, you don't determine your gifts, Your job is to discover them and then to put them into use. So, everyone has a calling. God determined it. Everyone has a set of gifts. God downloaded them. And everyone has a set of talents and abilities, and God decided on those. Now, talents and abilities, those are the things that God has put in us that aren't spiritual gifts, but they are things that we're good at. So the ability to play music, that's not a spiritual gift, but that is a talent or ability. And let me tell you, I don't have it. Believe, if I started singing, you would leave. You would go, we don't want to listen to you. So that's not a talent or ability that I have. But there are those who have that talent and ability, and God decided on those. And we want to use those things. We want to take what God has made us good at, what God has made us great at, and we want to use that for the sake of his kingdom, along with our spiritual gifts, as we chase the calling that he has for us. And we do all those things together, we really find our sweet spot. And so, somebody might have just a talent, a natural knack for understanding money and how that should work. And so that's a talent or a natural ability. God decided on that, put it in your life, and you can develop in it. Now, you are in LeaderStep. You've gone through Next Step. I'm telling you right now is the time to step up and to step out. And at the end of the Next Step, we talked to you about finding your gifts. Now is the time to deploy them. For steps 1 through 3 here, ideas 1 through 3, you need to get moving into forward motion. God can't steer a parked car. And so it's time to go, all right, God's got a calling. I'm going to step into chasing that. God's got spiritual gifts. I've discovered those. If you haven't yet, discover those and put them into practice. God's made me good at some stuff. He's given me some natural talent, some natural ability. I want to use that for the sake of his kingdom. Get moving forward with that. Now I want to shift a little bit more internally to you and what is uniquely you. So the fourth idea that I have for us, and there's 2 parts to this. Everyone has a certain character cap. The character cap, how high you can go based on the character that you have. See, all of us have some abilities. All of us have a height where we can go, but also we have character, and our character can limit how high we go. So everyone has a character cap. Here's the great part. God gives opportunities for you to change that. See, you weren't where you were. You aren't where you're going. And so we want to get where we're going. We want to get where God's called us. So we need to grow and expand our character. Now, character is king in the body of Christ. You have a calling, but your character determines how far you can go in that calling. And being a leader is all about, it starts with becoming who God called you to be. And I'm not right now talking about the do side of this. I'm talking about the be side. And so there are some do side. There are some best practices to leadership. There are some best practices to whatever it is, whatever serve team you may be on. There's some traffic laws. Here's how we do this. Here's how we don't do that. And all of that stuff, there's a lot of that that's due. What I'm talking about is the be side, who you are. And to develop in character, or to develop in leadership, you've got to develop in character. Now, a couple ideas about that, and this is where it can get tough. This is where it can be hard. People are hard to work for. We'll discover that. And that's sometimes where, you go, man, I don't know that I want to step into this because people are hard to work for. So you work for somebody and it seems limiting. It seems difficult. It seems like they grate on you. One thing I always like to remember is people are hard to work for, which means probably sometimes I'm hard to work for. So as I develop as a leader or as I come up under other leaders where I go, man, this is just difficult. I feel like I'm being ground on. I feel like I'm being worked on. Can I be honest with you? I feel like some of the great character development I've walked through in my own life, I feel like some of the great leadership development, leadership understanding, becoming a future leader has come in working with people who weren't great leaders. Because in working with someone who wasn't a great leader, I had ample opportunities for my character to develop, and I learned so much about leadership. People, not only are they hard to work for, people are hard to work with. Scripture, I say that, it reminds me of Proverbs. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And what's happening there is the friction. So you get in an environment and some of this person's rubbing on you and there's friction both ways. You react to them and they react to you. But what's happening there is our character is being developed. God most frequently works on us through others. And so he moves to address character issues in our life. And we'd all prefer that God would just whisper in our ear, hey, you need to work on this, and then it'd be different. But a lot of times God brings along someone who's going to rub us, feels like raw in that area, but it's because he's shaping us and he's developing us. So we want to recognize that and be willing to step into it. People are hard to lead. A lot of times we talk about leadership, you go, this job would be easy if it weren't for all the people. But the truth is, we are hard to lead. People that we're going to be with are going to be difficult to lead. And that's where we develop in character. That's where we develop as leaders, where we learn to serve people and we learn to lay our lives down. And we have to go to the foot of the cross and say, you know what, Jesus, I need you in this place. I need you to be with me. I need you to walk with me because these people that I'm leading are difficult to lead. But we develop as a leader when we develop our character. And then, this is a tough one, hurt people. Hurt people. Well, you just repeated yourself twice. Yeah, I did. The people who hurt people are people who have been hurt themselves. The easiest way probably to illustrate this is not with a person, but imagine you went to, the pound and you adopted a dog and you love that dog and that dog loves you and you do everything together, you go everywhere together, and there's just that man, it's just awesome. And so, that dog is part of your family. Your whole family loves it, and it's just great. And then one day, the dog's out, runs into the middle of the street and gets hit by a car, and you see that happen. And so you rush down, and you're going to lift that dog up and bring it back. But because that dog is lying there hurt, broke the pelvis or something like that, you reach down for the dog, and what does it do? It bites you. And you go, whoa, wait, that dog loves me, and I love the dog. And all that is true. But in the moment, he lashes out because he's been hurt. That is the case with people. That's what people do. Hurt people. So you go, okay, that's difficult. But Jesus died for people. And that makes people the most valuable thing on the planet. So we go, okay, hurt people are going to hurt people. But my job as a leader, part of my calling, is to be there for people. And people can change if they come into contact with the God who made them. And someone must lead them there. That's where we start to run into the great purpose why God has us here. He put us in the context that he put us in the circle of relationships that he put us in, to help those who are around us come into contact with him. Leading people is the most rewarding thing in the world because these people belong to God and he has a plan for their lives. I love watching people discover the plan that God has for them and then walking with them as they start to walk that out and they experience life as they meet with him and they find their sweet spot and they develop their gifts and they use it for his purpose. Not only that, but he has a special reward for those who lead them on his behalf. I'm going to read from 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 1 through 4, and then I'll make a couple comments. So he says this, "So I exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ." And so I'm not, just so you know, I'm not saying that every person who goes through LeaderStep, every person who's a leader is an elder, but I want you to watch what happens here because that's a different function. So Exhort the elders among you as a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, as well as a partaker in the glory that is going to be revealed, to shepherd the flock of God that is among you, exercising oversight, not under compulsion, but willingly, as God would have you, not for shameful gain, but eagerly, not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. Started this by saying there's a special reward for those who lead people to him, and that there it is, the unfading crown of glory. But there's a couple things I want to pull out, a couple words I want to pull out from this text here in 1 Peter 5. And the first is that he says that this happens among. So those are the people with whom you're presently associated. Now, I got to be honest with you. This is tough, because those are the people who know you best. Those are the people who know your strengths. Those are the people who know your weaknesses. Those are the people who know where you've been. Those are the people who know where you've screwed up. And so that's tough, but that's what we're called to do. And that's why we need to connect with Jesus, because it's Jesus who transforms us. And when we connect with him and we are in touch with how he's moving in our lives and we tell the story of what he's done for us, that puts us in a position to lead and to bring others with us. And so then he talks about shepherding. And the idea here is this is not the boss, but this is a caretaker. If you're going to be a leader of people, then you are the shepherd of the people. You're taking care and you're guiding them for the master's purpose. And so then that comes in, he talks about here exercising oversight. And oversight equals servanthood, and servanthood is what makes you great. I always think of Jesus speaking to his disciples, and the mom of James and John goes to Jesus. She wants something special for them, and so all the guys then are arguing about who's the greatest, and Jesus never rebukes them for wanting to be great. Jesus will never rebuke us for desiring greatness. In fact, in response to that, Jesus says, you guys want to be great? Let me tell you how to be great. And he explores an idea. He says, the path to greatness is servanthood. If you want to be great, the way to be great is to be a servant. And so then he says, well, we do all of this how? Willingly. It's not for gain. We don't get. If you want to lead in order to get, you're doing it wrong. It's not about getting. We lead, we do to give. Getting comes later in a variety of forms. That can come in promotion, where you get greater responsibility, or your reward, which is here or in heaven. So that will come later, but the purpose is not to get, it is to give. The last of these ideas here for leadership is that leadership lessons and character development occur best in, and then I'll run through some bullets for you. How do these occur best? In any leadership opportunity, not just your ideal one. As you're developing as a leader and leadership opportunities come up, you want to jump into it. You don't want to wait for the one to go, I don't know about this, or I don't know about that. I know the exact one that I want. No. Not just your ideal one, but any leadership opportunity as it comes. Why? Because the struggle is good. Struggling and working forward and finding some places where you got to develop and working through that development that pushes you forward, develops your character, and teaches you leadership lessons. So those occur best in places that you're over your head, where you're not quite ready. In fact, if you're ready, you're late. I'll never forget one conversation I had with my dad. I went into him and I was being asked to take on a really big leadership challenge. And so I went into him, and he's sitting there, and I think he's just typing away on some emails. So I knocked on the door, walked into his office, and said, hey, you know about this opportunity? He said, yeah. I said, do you think I'm ready? And so he's typing away, and he chuckles. He sits back, and he goes, well, there will be ample opportunities to learn where you aren't. So I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, you're not ready, but you step into this opportunity, you will be. Like, this is the right thing. Go for it. You don't have what it takes yet, but that's okay, because God's going to develop you. So if you're ready, you're late. Leadership lessons and character development occur best in circumstances where there is potential conflict. Conflict precedes growth. Growth comes after conflict. And so we want to step into those as they occur. Leadership lessons and character development occur best in situations where you're uncomfortable, where you don't know the way forward. Why? Because you got to develop. You got to learn. You got to rely on Jesus. You've got to reach out to him. You got to be desperate for him. Desperation for Jesus will always propel us forward. Leadership lessons and character development occur best in places where you face failure. I'm going to tell you something now. We're going to come back to it later as we walk through this small group together. Failure is not fatal. Now, I say that and people go, well, what about, this sin, or what about that? I'm not talking about moral failure. I'm not talking about sin areas. I'm talking about where you take some risks, where you try some things, and you try to innovate something new and it doesn't quite work out. Failure, particularly at Manor Church, failure is not fatal. And so we learn, we develop as leaders, we develop in our character best where we are stepping into a place where we could fail. And often where we do fail, but we want to learn to fail forward so that we develop and follow God with everything that we have. And then, obviously, they occur best in situations where you feel a deep need for God. God wants you in a place where you need him, where you live a life where you are regularly and constantly dependent on him. We have 5 practices of a man, a leader. And I'll be honest with you, we took these practices. The folks at Chick-fil-A spent a lot of time working on what are the practices of leaders. And so they did this huge study. And you know what they came down to? Let's take a look at what the best leader in the history of the world did, Jesus. And let's pull out some practices from him. And they make an acronym that he came up with himself. He says, greatness is service. And so we have 5 practices of a man, a leader, and they spell out serve. What are they? Well, we believe that a leader sees and shapes the future. So you want to see and shape the future. What does that mean? Catch the vision of where we're going and see where we're going and how what we do connects with where we're going. So we want to see and shape the future. We want to engage and develop others. Well, we always say that the greatest change agent in the world is faith. A lot of people say, I think it's love. Nope. It's faith. When you believe more for others than they believe for themselves. And so engaging and developing others is seeing and believing in others and saying, you know what? I see the future. I know where the future is, but I don't want to go alone. I want to engage with others and I want to help others come with me. We believe that a leader reinvents continually. What does that mean? Always improve. How can we make this better? We want to go through a constant process of looking at how we can improve, how we can upgrade, how we can follow God more closely. So see and shape the future, engage and develop others, reinvent continually, and then we want to value relationships and results. We want to value people and performance. We want to look at people and make people our value at the same time. You cannot go where you cannot see. And so we want to measure where we're going and what God is calling us to and what the best practice is. And we want to look at how we perform against those practices, how we perform against those metrics. So we value relationships and results. And then finally, we want to embody the values. What does that mean? It means walk your talk. Be who you say that you are and do what you say that we do. Listen, we want you on our serve team. We want you to engage in a serve team. We believe that you have a calling uniquely from God. You've got gifts, talents, and abilities that will propel you forward, and you have the capacity to grow in your character. God's calling you into it. We're waiting for it. We cannot wait to see what God does in your life. So if you're not yet engaged with the serve team, start this leadership development process and come back next week where we're going to dive into the operational principles, the very DNA of Manor Church. We love you. God bless you.